are you indicating that's my responsibility? I would accept no responsibility whatsoever.
Then, now, forever, together.
Wow, that is the most produced intro the most specific produced intro we've ever had. Shouts out to brother Famalam over there.
It gave what it needed to give.
It did. It did.
No, yeah.
It did.
Shout out.
It did. It did.
If you're watching this special random piece of content that's on the Black Rasslin page, you have, hopefully you've at least watched the first episode of the new Netflix series, Mr. McMahon, about goddamn Vince McMahon. We have decided, because in thinking about the story of Vince, and obviously that means the story of WWF, it's really the story of like pro wrestling in America. Like, if you call yourself I'm not trying to hype this. We are not doing these recaps because of whoever produced it. But what I'm saying is like, if you are like finally like, damn, what's the Vince? I've heard all this stuff in the news. I'm not really a big wrestling fan, but I want to learn some more about it. Like, I would say this is the mini-series, docu-series for you. Right before we started recording, shouts out DDM. For anybody who ain't seen DDM lately, there he is. DDM was reflecting what a lot of people were saying, especially based off of, I guess, Monday, the week that the docu-series dropped. Vince dropped a statement online calling it, he said from the little bit of it was the unedited or however he called it, version of the series that he saw, he was basically calling it a bunch of hogwash. He said they was lying, and they was trying to get you thinking about him as the character versus separating him and the man. That Tuesday, it was funny to hear Dave Meltzer be like, hey, I don't know why Vince McMahon even said that. If his thought was to not have eyes on this docuseries, that's the last thing you want to do, is to like put out that type of statement before it drops. But I think, getting to what DDM was saying, and I think a lot of the echo online from people who've been seeing it early, was this thing where, if you know the Vince McMahon story, if you know the story of WWE, a lot of this is not necessary. You're not like hitting new ground at all. All of this is, you should be familiar with a lot of this stuff for the most part. So before we get into any of the specifics, in watching this, how were y'all going into Mr. McMahon? Are you trying to are you trying to understand who the person is? Are you trying to, uncover any truths that may have been locked in the WWE archives? Like, what are your thoughts? What was your thoughts before press and play on episode 1, Mimi?
Y'all know, I've been reading. I did a lot of wrestling reading over the summer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stories, as I've said here, and as I've said on TBT, mm-hmm. It's been consistent. Everybody's thoughts, everybody's recollection of their of what their stories are, what stories have been told to them, whether mm-hmm. reporters, wrestling historians, etc., have been consistent. And this is consistent. This basically, I was going into it because he was a part of it, I was going into, okay, this will solidify the consistent stories. Mm-hmm. And it solidified the stories for me.
Mm-hmm. What about you, DDO?
I'm gonna have a different take on that.
Okay. Speak your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, full disclosure, I have not watched the whole special.
Okay.
But I think he's fucking hilarious. I think he's eccentric as hell. Okay.
He's a real weirdo.
He's an eccentric character. He is eccentric as hell. Do I think there's some sinister things sitting in the back of that workshop? Absolutely. I do not deny that at all. But he is a damn king. He cracks me the hell up. Now, I know for the people who, I want to be clear, for the folks who are victims of him or have suffered abuse or bad doing from him, my heart goes out to them, and I don't want to discount that, even if it sounds like I am.
Right.
But there's a saying my grandmother has: the devil is one of the most charming people.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I don't think it's anything it's some sinister stuff in the back of that workshop.
Right.
But baby, I'm gonna tell you, in these interviews, he got me a couple times.
You should, well,
he got me a couple times. I was like, you know what, Vince? I snickered a little bit.
I think part of that may be because, again, especially for depending on when you started watching WWE specifically, you may only know a certain type of Vince, and Vince isn't somebody who, especially over the last 15 years, has been like trying to do sit down interviews like this. I think that's part of the reason why he did this. It really feels like it's some kind of, all right, before I pass, before anything else happens, while I'm still whatever, let me tell my story the way I want to tell it, at this point. I was getting a lot of that too, but I can understand that, DDM, because it's definitely there's you learn a lot when it was the way in episode 1 he looked like he was disgusted at the term pro wrestling. He's like, oh, yeah. I don't even want to make that. But before we get too deep, Brother Fam, I wanted to pose the same question to you. Before you press play on episode 1 of Mr. McMahon, how were you approaching the series? Because I know a lot of people are looking at it a lot of different ways.
Well, it's kind of like how a lot of folks have been looking at like the new, like the Undertaker podcast, where we haven't seen this guy outside of what has been presented on TV. So I'm mostly looking forward to, and I know some folks have been disappointed saying, well, we got nothing new. Right. I kind of disagree. But what we got new was as real a story as he's ever going to tell on camera recording. Because for the most part, we've gotten overly polished, very, very intentional Vinnie Mac. And
right.
We got Vince this time for the most part, niggas cussing and being as candid as he will allow himself to be. And for me, that's really what I was looking for here. We know he's nasty. We know he's the most important person in the history of pro wrestling. So learning new facts, I don't know, but the presentation and seeing what we saw from Vince is pretty good. I'm not finished. I am in the middle of episode 5.
Oh wow! Yes,
I would say I'm surprised that anybody would look for anything new. I would think that they would want to validate their feelings of their thoughts and what they think this man is, or because he starts off, I don't want anybody to know who I really am. Right. Which is interesting, which is so interesting. Yeah. I don't want to talk about myself. I don't like talking about myself. Anybody else. Right, exactly. And it's like, what? What are you talking? I don't even think I know who I am, he says. Right. And that's interesting. That's really, really interesting.
It seemed like a lot of them shared that insight as well. Kind of
Would
they say? I mean, you hear this a lot. I've heard this term a lot, but I think like when you think about Vince McMahon, the idea that not only is he only letting you know what he wants you to know, but like nobody in his inner circle really knows. I don't know. I don't even want to speculate on who may know the most about Vince McMahon, but I feel like it's Pat Patterson may have. Pritchard. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Pritchard maybe. What was
to him?
What was the guy? Was it Dunn? What was the production guy who was there for
Kevin Dunn?
It's like I think it's guys like that probably got to. They probably got to see the most, real and honest Vince. But
I think it's only a few people like Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson was his man. That was his boy, and I think Pat probably knows him the best, or at least he's at the top of that.
100%.
Of people who really has insight to who Vince McMahon is, and probably the people who came from the territories era, probably because they seen him grow.
Right.
They have insight onto who he really is. I know one thing: Tony Atlas cracked me the hell up.
Tony
my
Atlas.
gosh.
There's a couple of he may be he's low key the MVP so far. In the
Yes,
2 episodes I've seen.
He
I
was
hate
like,
Tony
oh,
Atlas.
In this or
oh
in
my
general?
God.
In this or in general?
In this and in general,
There's
because
Oh my
he seemed
God.
like such a goddamn lapdog coon boy. Like
No,
when you're long at the ball
really?
say that. Long at the
wait,
ball say it.
there's one. I think I wrote something down in my notes, but it's in episode 2, so I don't want to get too far ahead because there's one moment in particular where I think that speaks to that, and that may be an interesting conversation. Because I think the problem was what he was saying wasn't wrong, but it's he's a character. I think he's probably the most in character person while he's up there also speaking.
I didn't
his
feel
truth.
like he was in character.
I didn't
I
either.
felt like,
I-
especially in episode 1, I feel like he was telling it like it is. He talked about, how Vince was showing what America was. You know what I mean? With all those, the Iranian and all that stuff with the Iron Sheik and Sergeant Slaughter and all of that. I feel like he was really telling us like, look. And then he said, Vince McMahon says, yeah, you talking about his father and how he died, and his father had a lot of respect for him, and their relationship grew, and then next they cut to Tony, and he's like, he hated his father.
Right.
Yeah, he was good for that stuff too. He was really
died.
good for that stuff. Yeah, he was good for that.
I think it was Tony Atlas cracked me the hell up. So Hulk Hogan really is a very self-absorbed.
I
Oh
can't.
my god! Oh my god!
Like he
Terrible.
is.
I think the thing about Hogan though, the Hogan thing is interesting because the Hogan thing is a mirror, and they told you one thing, and I think it's been true for the baby faces that have had success under Vince is everything is spoon fed. Everything is spoon fed.
His name.
Hulk Hogan
Until it's
was
not.
only Hulk Hogan because he listened to Vince, and that was the thing that everybody said. And Hogan is the mirror. That's the one thing I like about this is pro wrestling tells you that pro wrestling can get nasty and disgusting and all that, but at the end of the day, it's an American mirror. It's what you see from what's outside on your
That's what Tony
idiot box.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's culture. It's a cultural mirror.
It really. I think watching stuff like this. That's why I think this is key for people who may be interested in pro wrestling but are not familiar with it at all. Because I think that's the type of stuff that you like. Since I was a kid, the pay-per-view start and they do the national anthem and stuff like that. Like, that stuff always would happen, but you don't think about it when you were a kid. It's not till you this age now, and a couple years look back like, damn, this shit is really as American as pumpkin pie. And this shit has been around for a lot longer than some other shit's been, but this right here is putting it right on Front Street that, hey, what Vince said, this is America. No Donald Glover. This is America that I'm putting on that screen right there. It's very fascinating. It's very fascinating.
He's not lying. I think that what I do think is that one thing he said is you can't put the standards of today on of yesterday or something like that. And I really agree with that. I'm sorry. Like
it's a dangerous statement though, right?
It's dangerous
because it validates so much.
I mean, yeah, but I'm not saying that if you were raping people and killing them, of course, that's a horse of a different color. The things that were going on at the Playboy Man, that's a horse of a different color. But the way that we view, I'm speaking specifically to the way that WWE subconsciously in that time shaped how generations would view other ethnicities.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, and watching that in that first episode, it hit me because one of my best friend, my sister, I love her, her children grew up in the ruthless aggression era, and so they were watching old footage of Junkyard Dog, and Junkyard Dog was coming down there, and the baby said, "Ma, I don't like him. He looked like a slave."
Oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Perception, but he did it purposefully. He did it purposefully,
and it made me understand the Iron Sheik. All of those guys, I tip my hat to them.
You have to.
Did what they had.
They
to
endured it.
do to
That's right.
pay their bills and do what they love. Did they have to eat some crow and be a stereotype to do that? Absolutely. And some people would say, well, you should have just walked away. It's hard to walk away from a passion.
Well, that's what you have to wrestle with. Yeah.
Who's an athlete, and this man is paying me a substantial salary. Yeah, I could go to Mid-South or one of these territories that are dying, but they're not going to give me the opportunity. Yes, Iron Sheik was a stereotype, but he's an iconic one.
Right.
Hey,
he dangled it in front of them.
You got to call that spade a spade. Not only are these territories dying, Vince was actively killing them.
Well, let's get to that.
So he dangled the prize in front of them, and intentionally. He said he went out and saw what was happening outside and said, "Oh, let me do this." Like he, to the point where it became detrimental at one point, and they had to spin the whole Sergeant Slaughter situation. But
Jesus, yeah.
he was intentional with it. He was intentional.
I think one of my favorite parts of that first episode is kind of seeing, like, I will say, again, I'm not saying that it's not been out there before, but hearing Vince talk about his mindset in that territory era where they talked about the good old boys and people having the agreements, whatnot. And this is when he made me laugh, because he's like, look, you don't own nothing.
Right.
If you can't compete with me,
rich,
tough. Now, mind you,
he's gonna come back to bite him.
It comes back to bite, but mind you, he like, this is the guy who bought his daddy's company with the money that was his daddy's company. Like, that was such a slick. When she said he was robbing Peter to pay Paul, I'm like, you goddamn right he wasn't, and the dumbass daddy let him do it.
I said, what? What did you just say?
Oh, this what came from the gate? Oh, daddy, huh? Here go my next payment. That's a couple days early, daddy. Here you go. Are you serious?
I know Vern Gagne hated this man.
Well, they all did. When Brett was like, hey, it was funny because Brett was saying this while they were showing images of him on Stampede and him on WWE television.
They did it to everybody.
But that shit was so dope.
Nigga.
Yeah, you did the same damn thing. He went up there and said, you want to check?
He did too.
Oh, bet. You know what we about to do? We about to go back to Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You trying to go on this trip with a couple of your brothers? Right. Yeah, I bet you did. I bet you did. You took your daddy's shit down too. But nah, it was interesting to hear him talk about that.
Would you rather cry in a Toyota or the Maybach?
That's but that's the thing. That's the thing. It's like that's the thing you got to wrestle with. It's either are you going to be real hip hop and stay in Mid-South or stay in Stampede and make what you making for the that region, or are you trying to go with Vince and say, I know we in Madison Square Garden, but we about to be in St. Louis, Missouri and Phoenix, Arizona, or whatever. Like and shit was moving.
Meet me in Missouri.
But the shit was moving.
I think. Also, looking at in this episode,
I know. I was like, "What's going on? Is that Vince
on the floor?" Yeah, right. God damn it! That's not me. I'm a cast character.
Sorry, Didi.
You're fine. Looking at this first episode, Vince was not one of them. He was very eccentric once again, very much an outsider, and to me, he didn't seem like one of the boys. I think Vince is an artist, but he is a shrewd businessman.
Oh my God.
I say he is an artist because the things that he wanted to do, the things that he was introducing, the things that he saw for it takes a lot of vision. They made a statement that I thought was very true. In a montage in the beginning of this episode, they said Vince McMahon is the P.T. Barnum of this sport.
Oh yeah,
clearly
he absolutely is. And I, like I said, I know the man is 2 sheets to the wind. I know he is crazy. I have to watch more episodes, but honestly, they were saying this is going to be a burial. So far, to me, and once to be clear, I haven't watched the whole thing. It's not good. He will be fine after this.
Yeah, I think
I don't know why they said this was a burial.
Yeah.
Like he was valid. Regardless of when they were recording half of these things, he was entwined in the whole thing, and he validated every single. He validated that he's shrewd. It's business first. He doesn't care. He validated that he took the territories. He didn't care.
Yeah.
He validated. So I don't understand why people thought this was going to be a burial. I don't understand why he put that statement out because, bro, everything that we knew you to be, like, it's true. You said it. That's who you are.
I wonder what he like because I mean we haven't gotten to episode 2 yet. That'll be another. Stay tuned. That'll be another. But I mean episode 2 there's so much of the everything that was happening to him in the late 80s and early 90s type stuff. So I wonder if he kind of. I'm not saying it paints him in like a terrible light or whatever. He's already been in a bad light, but I also don't know where he would be thinking that they were, the way he was talking, it sounds like he was watching a different documentary.
I think so.
I think the issue is, and it happened a couple times during the whole thing, is that homeboy was Rick James on Dave Chappelle's couch. He would say one thing and be very like, I am this way. And then the producers say, well, they said this, or this one said that. And then he was like, well, yeah, they would feel that way because, and they have the right to feel that way. It's just, there's sometimes a double standard when it comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, listen,
no accountability.
It's funny because that's most people. Yeah. People like, yo, I feel this way, but I want people to be more sympathetic than I am to other people. And I think that's a big thing that we see with him through the entirety of this that kind of tells like who he is.
Damn.
The awe and the audacity of that is something I slightly admire about somebody willing to be honest enough to do that.
Damn.
Because I feel like most people aren't. I'm not saying, once again, oh my God, people are going to hate me. But being a shrewd businessman and not apologizing for it, the only thing that I think is probably going to be damaging is the sexual assault stuff.
Yeah, any of that stuff, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like that kind of stuff, that's like you and Bruce Pritchard banging somebody out in the room, and they didn't consult, consent to it.
It's not funny. It's not funny.
Also, too, at the same time, if you did consent to it, okay, and you just didn't like how it worked out for you,
I think there's probably a lot of that mixed up in there. I can only imagine again because once you get outside of Vince McMahon's a success, and he created modern American pro wrestling. Like there's a lot of dirt on his name. So, but again, I don't know who had screeners for this before it dropped. I don't know how he saw an unfinished version. I can't imagine when somebody would have gotten a copy of that to show him, because that sounds like that would have been a minute ago, and this thing's kind of been through a number of different iterations. So it's really hard to tell what he could even be speaking.
That's what I think. I think
he saw this.
I don't even if he. My thing is, if he saw it or didn't see it, I don't think his response would change. I feel like he would still be on some I'm a man there, because he has to say that. You know what I'm saying?
He wants to control his narrative.
That's the only way he can do it.
If there's 30 seconds of this thing where Vince would be like, probably should have did that different. Oh, I wish I had a second tape. And he doesn't have that final cut. You know what I mean? He don't got that. He don't have to pull. The rumors today have been crazy. Like this nigga tried to buy it, and then he tried to like some sort of injunction to get niggas to edit certain episodes. Like I've kind of, in pro wrestling, you believe nothing, and you know what I mean. You trust nothing, but all of these things, man.
Schumacher say that. What did Schumacher say?
Like I can see it.
Schumacher said, "What did Schumacher say? Anybody that believes anything in pro wrestling, like there's no nothing in pro wrestling that anybody should be believing.
Right.
But this is truth.
I would believe, because I've heard situations like that before where there's been some damaging a documentary about some rich person and they've been like, yo, I want to kill that piece. I'm, whether it's an article, whether it's a documentary, whatever the case may be. I could believe it, but I think the thing is, and this is again, depending on when this actually would have happened, it may have been too far gone. I don't know how much he would have been able to pay to get the rights for something like this, because they would have upped the ante. They probably would have at least said 50 mil, if not 100 to 200 to 300. Like
he has it to pay it.
It would have been whatever per episode, but they know what they've got. They know, especially if you're then talking about. Because realistically, for all intents and purposes, this is the beginning of the WWE NXT or Netflix deal. Like there's not been anything else that's been new since they announced that, right?
Right.
And they're about to be the next 5 years. Netflix is about to be the place. I mean, that's for Raw in the US, but worldwide, that's going to be the place if you are a WWE fan. Dubs. But this is not sponsored. But I don't think Vince would have been. He would have had to come up out of pocket crazy if they were going to be like, all right, let's really sit down and figure out how much this doc is worth to you. How many? Give us some of them stock options if you're really trying to be about it. But
he got it. What was it? 9 million.
It was a grip of monies that he got for that. But I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I don't want to. Obviously, the first episode. Oh, Mimi was talking. We were offline, and it was interesting that the Vince McMahon story that we get from this kind of starts at like 12 years old when he meets his daddy. Like he very much glosses over what has been known in a couple of interviews in the past, and I guess if he's written about in his book or whatever, it's like a fairly traumatic childhood. I believe he was abused. I don't know the extent of the abuse from his biological mother and his stepfather, but I mean, he talked about in Mr. McMahon. He said, "Hey, I got the crap beat out of me every day," but then he said, "What?" He said, "You just got to take it until you can figure a way out of it." That felt very Vince-like to me, but I don't know if that seems like something that an old man would say, reflecting on 60, 70 years ago.
Sounds like how he ran his business too.
Yeah, exactly. He ran. Yeah, I don't want to jump into, but somebody else made a comment about it later on and said those, not necessarily those very same words, but that within context to that, and it felt like that. It felt like that even as a fan. Like you can tell when people were getting punished. It was crazy. It was a little nuts, and it gave me insight based off of the relationships he had when he was a child and how he ran his business with the respect of it's almost as if they targeted people that didn't have much, and very rarely do you hear, especially around that time, that there's a pro wrestler that came from money, and right. When you target people that are like that have troubled homes, they'll do anything for you, anything, and it seemed like he would do anything he wanted his father's acceptance to the point where it's almost like he turned against his dad silently, right? Yeah. And so, but till this day, when he talks about, I don't know if he just turns on the waterworks, but he talks about his father saying "I love you" one time. That is nuts.
He said they never talked about why he wasn't in his life as a kid.
That's crazy.
Has learned from a very early age that pain is life.
Yes.
You have to move on. And unfortunately,
however you see fit. And unfortunately, a man of that era is not going to think about therapy services. Mm-mm. They're not going to think about the way that you deal with it. Mm-hmm. And you see it in his eccentricity. You see it in when there's a saying, if the child feels no warmth, he'll burn the whole village down to get it. And I think that is
one of the reasons why he destroyed the territories.
Mm-hmm.
Never fit in with them. So
Mm-hmm.
I have no stake in you. You don't
Mm-hmm.
shake my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Gorilla Monsoon, you're the heir apparent anyway. Oh, my dad likes you.
Yeah.
You're going to be the one to take this from my dad. Okay, Gorilla Monsoon, I got something for you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do this shit the way that I see it. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to finesse you on the buy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to give a shout out. Linda McMahon look good, bitch.
She did. She did.
She looked good like she looked at Mania. And we all know she was out there pussy rolling on a nigga grave.
Linda was beat, honey. The
Yes,
film
she
was
was.
on point. The makeup artist locked in. It was. I was like, "Is that Linda?"
It was
Yes.
weird. It was
She
Linda
got a
interesting.
little pinch. It's giving it a slight pinch.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe she's just older, but it was giving a slight.
It was
Mhm.
interesting.
It's like
It was-
contour.
So they, I mean, this first episode, we don't want to stay too long, especially because we know there's more episodes to talk about. But kind of ends around Hulkamania running wild.
Mm-hmm.
80s, you know. I guess probably around when I was a little kid, starting to really get into it. The the TNT, the USA Tuesday Night Titans, and the Rock and Wrestling. It did mention. I was glad that they mentioned, because every time there's a pro wrestling documentary, at some point Hulk Hogan got to come up. So I was kind of like, God damn it, here we go. If I was on the Patreon be like, okay, I can talk that shit again. But I'm glad that they made sure to put in that like we were saying earlier, that man was basically manufactured to the point where like, all right, that ain't your name, bro. What the fuck is you calling yourself? This your name,
Right?
Oh, you want to be? It was
Golden Sterling Golden.
Sterling Golden, yeah. And when my man was like, "Hey, so Sylvester Stallone saw me on TV. I want to be in Rocky 3."
Lies.
He said, "Bitch, you want to be in Rocky 3? You gonna rock your ass to the unemployment line?" He said, "Bet, I'm going. But of course, he came back. Hogan says it himself. I think it may be in a later episode where he's like, I knew I was just waiting to go back. It wasn't like he was gone for forever, but it was again them charting that story about how he went to did the movie, came back, was in AWA, and was basically turning himself in. It reminded me of when Steve Austin went from WCW to ECW and was down there basically starting to cut promos like you would start to see Stone Cold Steve Austin do on WWE a couple years later. Like being able to see that process and then it be turned into something. It's interesting to have that stuff in there, but I guess as we'll see later on, there's going to be so much Hulk Hogan in this. I'm guessing I've only watched the first two, and the first two episodes are full of Hogan. I'm 3 and 4 gotta have some Hogan in there, at least 3, because they got to be doing Monday Night Wars. Damn it, I can't get through half of this series without seeing that. Anyway, I think we're gonna stick a pin in this for now, because we do, because this is a 6-episode docuseries, we're gonna hit you with 6 no cap recaps. You may not see all the same faces. Depends on who's rocking and who's around and who's made enough time in their day to watch the rest of the series. But shouts to y'all for tapping in with us. Hopefully you have watched, because I don't want to be trying to spoil the viewer. So I'll say this: if you ain't watched this shit yet,
Gotta watch it.
you watch the docuseries, but like, make a playlist. I'll make a playlist. Save the playlist. So when you're done watching the series on Netflix, come over here and you can get our episode by episode recap
That's right.
I mean, you muted, fam. You muted, fam.
I think he's talking to somebody. He's talking.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
There you go.
If you click this first episode, it's called episode 1 Junior No Cap Recap. Nigga, if you click this video and watch the whole thing to this point, you're a dummy.
Oh my god!
You're a whole dummy. You stupid. You should big stupid dummy. And your mother don't love you.
You stupid. All right, that's enough for this time.
Ring it.
We will catch y'all very soon. I don't know what the cadence of these going to be. You may see it in the next day. You may see it in another 10 minutes. Depending on what we're doing. Shouts to y'all for rocking with us. Patreon.com/Black Rasslin, YouTube.com/Black Rasslin. Turnbuckle Talk every Tuesday evening, 6:35 on the Twitter, Twitter.com/Black Rasslin. You know the vibe. We out. Peace.